Well, Russia's Fire Factory paperweight of an aircraft carrier may no longer be the funniest aircraft carrier in service, and they've got Iran to thank for that. Iran made a splash in the international media last week by unveiling the nation's first drone aircraft carrier, the Shahid Bagheri, in what could be a big boost in force projection capabilities for Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. At least, as long as the US military decides to allow it to exist. Because over the past year or so, the US Air Force has been testing a new weapon system that could not only take out this new Iranian warship with a single shot, but it could do it for less than the cost of a single Hellfire missile. So let's talk about Iran's new drone aircraft carrier, what it could be capable of, and why a single B-2 Spirit could delete Iran's entire surface fleet in a single sortie. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Sea Power. In 2022, the Pentagon officially listed quantum computing as one of the 6 emerging technologies that could have a huge impact on the future of defense, particularly when it comes to encryption and stealth, both in the air and deep beneath the sea. And this week, tech giant Google announced their plans to put the first quantum computers on the commercial market within just the next 5 years. While lots of defense focus tends to be on new fighter jets, aircraft carriers, or missiles, the race to field the most powerful computers may just be the most important one for the future of national security. And I've been staying on top of this thanks to Ground News. Ground News is an aggregator that collects articles published by news outlets all around the world and places them all into a single, easy-to-read feed, making it simpler than ever to not just stay on top of what's going on in the world, but also to peer through the veil of bias that's so common in modern news media. Right here on Ground News, I can see that only 22 outlets have covered this story so far, with little to no difference in coverage depending on political party. But you can still see clear differences in the way this story is presented, depending on an outlet's area of focus. Mainstream news outlets like Reuters give a simple rundown of the facts, with headlines like, Google says commercial quantum computing applications arriving within 5 years. And of course, financially focused outlets are leaning more into the market, with headlines like, Bill Gates says quantum computing could be useful in 3 to 5 years. This strong buy stock could be the #1 way to play it. Ground News also shows you vital information about each outlet along with the headlines, like their political bias, factuality rating, corporate ownership, or government affiliations. And I love the Ground News For You tab that compiles stories that are sure to interest me, based on the topics I've chosen to stay on top of. Ground News is a big part of my day-to-day news consumption and my research, and it can be for you too. In fact, I can get you a great deal. Just go to ground.news/sandboxx with 2 X's, or follow that link in the description below to get 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use every day. Again, that's ground.news/sandboxx to get 40% off their Vantage plan to help you stay on top of things. Last week, the Shahid Bagheri officially entered service after sea trials that began last November and its conversion from a commercial container ship that began in 2022. That is correct. This new drone aircraft carrier is actually about a quarter-century old, with a flight deck installed onto what was formerly the Iranian-flagged cargo ship Pararin, and before that, it was the Silvercraft, and before that, it was the Iran Kerman. This ship was originally built by Hyundai Heavy Industries in South Korea back in 2000, but now, adorned with a 4th name and a 590-foot flight deck with a ramp at the end, this roughly 787-foot warship can now prowl the waters of the Middle East on behalf of the Iranian regime. In some of the footage that's been released so far, we can see modified Abibel 3 drones equipped with small turbojet engines affixed under wing, operating from the deck of this new drone carrier. Now, under normal circumstances, this is a surveillance drone with a roughly 23-foot wingspan and a top speed of around 120 miles per hour, with a combat radius of only around 30 miles. But the addition of those turbojets could dramatically change the performance of this platform, and to be honest, there just aren't enough details available for us to be sure of what it's capable of in this configuration. Now, the fact that this aircraft is usually relegated to intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or ISR duties notwithstanding, there is plenty of evidence to suggest that it could also carry small munitions in the same way earlier iterations of the same Abibel line have. Now, footage released by Iran also shows several other drones, and some are clearly modeled after Iran's infamous attempt at convincing the world it had a stealth fighter in development, the Kahar 313. Now, originally unveiled with lots of aplomb back in 2013 as an advanced new stealth jet meant to carry a single pilot on board, the aircraft instead became something of an international embarrassment for the Iranian regime, with experts immediately pointing out that the aircraft wasn't even big enough to safely carry a pilot in an ejection seat, let alone all of the other requisite systems for an advanced fighter before we even consider payload. Now, Iran responded by releasing video of what was clearly a subscale remote control airplane under the auspices of testing footage. But now it seems that remote control aircraft has found renewed purpose as the basis for Iran's new carrier-based drones, which the nation claims completed flight testing in December of 2024. But other reports suggest the drone only made its first flight at that time. Regardless, aside from the ability to launch and recover a variety of drone aircraft, the Iranian government has also demonstrated the vessel's ability to launch and recover small boats, something that could definitely benefit both crewed fast attack boat and uncrewed boat operations, and according to Iranian reports, even uncrewed submersible vessels, or drone submersibles. Because of the ship's commercial lineage, it offers a pretty significant unrefueled range of around 22,000 nautical miles, which is a bit more than 25,000 regular miles for those of us who aren't pirates, and it can cover all that distance at a maximum speed of around 20 knots, or about 23 miles per hour, thanks to its B&W 8K90MC 20,000 kilowatt diesel engine. Now, it isn't clear how large of a crew the ship is meant to operate with, but it's standard for commercial vessels of this sort to be able to sail without being resupplied for weeks on end, thanks to ample space on board for food and water storage, along with its fuel stores. Iranian officials have claimed the vessel is armed with both short and medium-range air defense systems, though specifics regarding those weapons remain undisclosed. Then there's certainly ample room on the rear of the ship behind its main superstructure to include a variety of surface-to-air missile systems, or even to add another landing area for rotorcraft or vertical takeoff and landing drones. Of course, the most important aspect of this new drone aircraft carrier is its ability to launch and recover a wide variety of unmanned aircraft. But the threat this ship poses to American security and interests abroad is a lot more indirect than it is direct. As a sea-based launch platform for UCAVs and one-way kamikaze drones, not to mention fast attack boats or surface drones, this ship could offer Iran the ability to launch attacks from new vectors or directions, complicating matters for air defenders distributing defense assets in preparation for an Iranian attack. And of course, this ship's mobility and firepower could also make it much easier than ever for Iran to wreak havoc on commercial shipping lanes. Again, maximizing the reach and the complexity of their anti-ship attacks to make it harder than ever to defend against them. And that is a big problem, not just for the American economy, but for global trade that relies heavily on shipments of oil and other goods traversing Middle Eastern waterways. As we've seen from Iranian proxies like the Houthis over the Red Sea in the past year, it doesn't take a great deal of advanced technology to create big problems for global trade. And there's no denying that the Shahid Bagheri could do an even more effective job of throwing a big wrench in the world's commerce machine. But then, if this ship were to mount such an attack on global trade, that attack probably wouldn't last very long, and to be honest, neither would the ship. In fact, the US could send this drone aircraft carrier to the bottom of the Persian Gulf using little more than a new guidance kit and a dusty old bomb that's been sitting around since the heyday of the Cold War. Now, it is important to note that sinking a ship the size of the Shahid Bagheri is no small undertaking. These vessels are designed to withstand heavy seas, battering waves, and decades of service. And because of the immense value of the cargo they usually transport, a great deal of time and money has gone into ensuring damage to one portion of the ship does not result in catastrophic hull failure and the like. But as a commercial ship, Iran's new drone carrier also wasn't designed to absorb a few thousand pounds of high explosives detonating below the waterline alongside its hull, especially when it's deposited there by an aircraft you never even saw coming. And that's exactly what the Air Force Research Lab's quick-sink munition is all about doing, sending big ships to the bottom of the sea on the cheap. And when I say on the cheap, I mean less than the cost of a Sidewinder missile. Quick-sink is an experimental weapon system that's basically little more than an anti-ship JDAM, or Joint Direct Attack Munition. Now, JDAMs entered service back in 1999 as a means of turning unguided Cold War-era gravity bombs, often called dumb bombs, into low-cost precision-guided munitions. The bolt-on JDAM kit includes a tail section that houses a GPS-assisted inertial guidance system that connects directly to aerodynamic control surfaces on the tail, allowing the kit to guide the bomb into pre-planned GPS coordinates with an extreme degree of accuracy, even in weather conditions that would limit the efficacy of laser-guided weapons. Now, quick-sink builds upon that JDAM kit by incorporating a new multi-mode radar and infrared seeker to the front of the 2,000-pound class GBU-31 JDAM. When dropped, the weapon uses that onboard GPS-assisted inertial guidance to close with its target, but then it transitions over to the quick-sink seeker that scans the area with its onboard radar to identify the target vessel. Once it's identified the ship and tracked its relative velocity and direction, it transitions over to the infrared imaging seeker to identify its target point on that ship, a point on the hull of the vessel just beneath the waterline. Now, this precision targeting allows the quick-sink JDAM to hit its targets with the ship-sinking equivalent of the most prolific anti-ship weapon in the U.S. inventory, the Mark 48 heavy torpedo, one of the few weapons that can bring down even large vessels like a small aircraft carrier with a single hit. Now, as I mentioned before, sinking a large ship is a huge challenge. So huge, in fact, that sometimes they just aren't. And instead, you keep hitting them with anti-ship weapons until they can't continue to fight and are just left adrift. But the 20-foot-long, 3,700-pound Mark 48 heavy torpedo is among the most potent ship killers ever to reach service. And while a single Mark 48 launched from one of the U.S. Navy's Virginia-class attack submarines would have little trouble introducing the Shahid Bagheri to Davy Jones, well, that single torpedo would also cost around $5.5 million to replace, not to mention a trip to a friendly port to be rearmed. Quick-sink, on the other hand, could do the same job for around $250,000, dropped from inside the weapons bay of a B-2 Spirit flying 15 or so miles out. And that's not just a hypothetical concept, it's something the Air Force has already demonstrated its ability to do. Last summer, a B-2 Spirit armed with a 2,000-pound quick-sink JDAM successfully sank the former USS Tarawa with a single shot. A vessel that was longer than Iran's Shahid Bagheri with a similar displacement. Now, this wasn't the first time the weapon has proven to be this effective against large-hulled vessels, with similar tests being conducted in 2021 and 2022 from under the wing of the F-15E Strike Eagle. But the B-2 Spirit's ability to avoid adversary detection and targeting while flying with as many as 16 quick-sink bombs on board makes it a uniquely capable anti-ship asset for which no nation, particularly Iran, currently has a response. In fact, Iran has so few large-hulled vessels in service for its navy that a single B-2 carrying a full payload of quick-sink JDAMs could sink every frigate and corvette Iran has and still have a handful of weapons left over. Of course, If America's B-2 pilots were busy that day, the United States employs a wide variety of more expensive anti-ship alternatives that the Shahid Bagheri would likely struggle to defend against, including the less explosive but wildly capable AGM-158C-3, long-range anti-ship missile, or LRASM, which is a stealth, air-breathing, ship-hunting cruise missile designed to use two-way data links and onboard artificial intelligence to hunt the open ocean in packs, traversing hundreds of miles while looking for and identifying target vessels. Once a target's been identified, it uses onboard electro-optical sensors to identify the weakest point in that ship's defenses for it to deposit its 1,100-pound high-explosive warhead. Put simply, Iran's old cargo ship turned drone aircraft carrier may be an effective means of maximizing the impact of the nation's kamikaze drones. But like the Kahar 313 that's now sitting on its flight deck, the Shahid Bagheri is more about Iran trying to shape foreign perceptions of its military capability than it likely is about fielding actual military capabilities. And as we've seen play out over the past 3 years of Russian efforts in Ukraine, pretending to have a powerful military can only take you so far. So, while I don't think it's smart to be dismissive of nations fielding new military capabilities, because, after all, engineering prowess does not know geographical limits, you won't find me worrying much about Iran's new drone carrier. Because, well, if the Air Force decided it didn't want the Shahid Bagheri cluttering up the surface of the Persian Gulf anymore, there really isn't much Iran could do to stop the Air Force from just turning it into a new coral reef. And with that ends this edition of Sea Power from Sandboxx News. But before I go, I want to tell you guys that we have officially started selling merch. Find the link down in the description below so that you can get your own Air Power or Sandboxx News gear right now. I'm super stoked about it, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below and leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And of course, don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandboxx News.